Good afternoon. Excited to welcome everybody to today's webinar. As everybody can tell, I'm a little bit under the weather, so I'll be bringing my my Barry White host voice today to our webinar, and looking forward to spending some time with two great experts in our industry. The title of today's webinar is Beyond the Tap: Meeting Modern Payment Demands in a Connected Store. So the connected store the store is more connected than ever, but sometimes legacy payment systems are actually the weakest link in a store environment. Modern consumers view the payment process not as an end of a transaction chore, but more as a part of a seamless omni-channel shopping journey. So that's a little bit about what we're going to dig into today. My name is 𝗫𝗏, and I lead a sales team at Ingenico focused on ISVs, fintechs, and ISOs in the US. I'll moderate today and share a little bit of my color commentary throughout the session. I'm joined by two fantastic experts from POS, cloud, payments. Their expertise spans all three areas. Micah Clark from Toshiba Global Commerce Solutions and Troy Stelzer from Xenia Retail. Micah and Troy, would you guys like to give a short introduction of yourself? Maybe Micah first.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Micah Clark. I am the Director of Payment Solutions at Toshiba Global Commerce Solutions. Been in the payments industry for about 25 years. I'm basically in charge of all our payment solutions that will be, that Toshiba owns. Yeah, looking forward to chatting with Tim and Troy and, giving you guys some good information today.
Thanks, guys. Hi, I'm Troy Stelzer, CEO of Xenia Retail. I've been in the payments and point of sale realm for going on 26 years now. And before leading Xenia Retail, we led a Store of the Future consultancy practice where payments was one of our focus areas. So we've got a lot of arrows in our back, and I look forward to the conversation with Micah and Tim and hope that you guys get value out of it.
Absolutely. That's the goal. And to that point, if any questions come up during the conversation, feel free to put them in the chat and we can either address them real time or address them at the end. So encourage you to do it during the presentation so we can even make this more lively. And I'll also encourage Micah and Troy, keep it lively on each of our answers. Let's have a back and forth and make this a good conversation. So the first topic we're going to go through is the ecosystem shift. And really what we're talking about here is the move from traditional point of sale to more open platforms with modular architecture. And we're going to talk about the implications of that for both the merchant and the technology providers. And we each come from a little different perspective of the value chain for payments. So Mike, I'll start with you. With the modern store being so connected, we sometimes see that legacy payment systems and integrations can hold people back. From the Toshiba point of view, what is that fundamental shift, architecture shift happening? The monolith to modular platform. What's happening on the Toshiba side, and then in more your area of control, what's inherently how is that inherently changing the retailer's approach to payments?
Sure. So, at Toshiba, we live in both worlds. If anybody on the phone is familiar with Toshiba Global Commerce Solutions, we are basically a software and hardware provider for retail. And we live in both worlds. Like Tim said, we've got what I'll call our flagship point of sale payment solution that's been in the market for about 25 years now. And it still exists today. We have, the majority of our retailers are still on it, but, from a legacy perspective and just the weight of it is huge, right? So, and by the weight of it, I mean, from a security perspective, it's a fully integrated system, has been for those 25 years. So that the PCI burden is obviously very high. It's also highly customized per retailer, right? So if they want, kind of a simple change to update, say a screen on a device, something like that, it's a long-term project and it's very expensive, right? So that's our world. It has been for the past, I'll say 20 years, because over the last 5 years we've made a shift to a more modularized platform-based overall point of sale system, and with that comes a payments integration, right, or a payment solution, which I own. And so yeah, what we've done is we've learned our lessons when it comes to highly customized systems, and our retailers not wanting that. And what we've done is we've done our homework, and we've taken all those all those things we've customized over the years and put them in a configuration engine, right? So our retailers don't want to have to pay for and put a project in every time they want to make a change. They want to be able to go to a central configuration engine, make that change, and have that pushed out in the stores. And that's really what we've adopted, right? So from a security perspective, we've gone from a fully integrated system. The solution now is semi-integrated, keeping the point of sale as far out of scope as possible. And the shift for the retailer has been, it's a lot easier. Again, from a PCI perspective, it reduces the overall scope of their PCI DSS audit annually. And from an administration perspective, being able to configure and manage your business rules within a cloud, have that being able to push out to your stores, it really connects the store to your cloud and to your corporate environment. So I think that's the main shift. It's just basically simplified payments from an administration perspective and from a use perspective as well.
But what are some of the audits that you're bringing with this modern system that you're bringing merchants out of? What are some of those PCI audits, and you can quantify that a little bit of what life was like before and what it's like now?
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, if you want me to elaborate on the PCI perspective, life before was having point of sale in scope, like fully in scope, card data traversing your entire store ecosystem to get from the pin pad essentially out to your acquirer. Where today, the way we are architected, we have our, semi-integrated. If anybody's familiar with semi-integrated payments, it means we're basically keeping payments out of your point of sale, right? So your point of sale is basically passing us minimal information, an amount and a transaction type, and we are taking care of everything else, keeping point of sale and your entire store environment logically separated from your payments. And that's been a huge advantage. Yeah,
absolutely. No, good call out. That's a major shift.
You see me smiling and nodding over here, Tim. That's I think the biggest change for us. Moving from a monolith to a modular approach, and also that single layer of integration that can touch all of our platform, all the modules in our platform. That ability to remain out of scope for PCI has been a real game changer for us and our clients. And just for those of us on the webinar, Xenia Retail is a unified commerce platform with several modules like point of sale and mobile point of sale and self-checkout, and a couple of consumer modules that are consumer facing, shopper environment type modules. And the ability to modularize that, Tim, anticipating what your question might be, and having one integration to a payments capability, and then have that flow through to all of the customer touch points, is invaluable. We don't have to do a one-for-one integration for consumer mobile in the store using their smartphone in the shop. We've done that integration one time, and then that flows through, and it reduces the complexity of audit and everything downstream, as well, as you can imagine, because other than our loyalty module, we are completely out of scope for PCI, and the benefits are substantial for our client base, where they don't have to really mess with point of sale being in scope at all.
Yeah. So, Troy, from an ISV perspective, what does that do for you when you can segregate out payments and make that just a module? what else can you do with your new open system that would have been such a pain in the past? Like, what are the possibilities now that you're
Yeah,
thinking
well,
about?
we have a practice that focuses on pop-up. So
Yeah.
a division within Zennia that just focuses on Fortune 500 brands and CPGs that want to execute pop-up or immersive experiences around their marketing teams to launch new products or a new event or a new film or what have you. And our ability to really orchestrate very complex interactions between the customer and the brand, but always have payments as a companion, basically dragged along with us, no matter where we're interacting with that, between the guest and the brand, where that interaction happens, have that consistent touch point of all of the same prompts, all of the same capabilities, whether you want to use Apple Pay or a credit card, um, just having all of that simplified. It benefits from a IT infrastructure perspective, but also from a consumer satisfaction perspective, where if they're interacting with a main brand, like a main retailer, like Target or somebody else, and they know what the flow is like in a Target store on the payment devices at Cash Wrap, we are able to drag that along throughout the entire experience and mimic that on mobile, on a kiosk.
Yeah.
Maybe when we're using RFID enabled lanyards to tap an RFID reader as a proxy for the cloud cart, we're able to flow that through and treat payments as a utility rather than a hindrance. And to Micah's earlier point about dealing with it as a monolith and having all of that, really that mess inside of PCI scope, boy, I'm sure glad those days are over. And that loosely coupled capability that really started in that early 2010s timeframe, we're all beneficiaries of that.
Yeah.
Just going into more of the modularity and kind of that conversation, from a payments perspective, I didn't really mention this, but, with the legacy systems, like you said, Troy, it was basically a separate integration for Touchpoint, right? And the way we've simplified that for our retailers as well, it's the same thing that you're doing over at Zennia. We've got a single integration for all touch points, right? For mobile, for kiosk, for self-checkout, for point of sale. It's all the same integration. So
You bet. Yeah, well, I want to start mobile point of sale. I want to start selling at the wall and increasing basket size by items per transaction through consultation with a sales associate. Well, what's that going to look like? If you start to look at what a project scope looked like in 2015 for adding 𝗵𝗲s, or even 2020, to what it looks like now for us, it's a matter, a few months, maybe even weeks for us to toggle on 𝗵𝗲s, certify a device on both ends, a payment device, and not having to open up the hood and tear through a bunch of code spaghetti to make it happen. And it's a different day today.
agreed.
Yeah, I would also add that Ingenico's followed a similar type of transition in our on-terminal payment application. I remember when I started 10 years ago, retailers were scared to death to touch any screen that happened on a payment terminal because we had a single monolith of code and you had to use all the proprietary tools. Yep. You had to do full QA testing. You had to get the manufacturer to sign every single form for some, not necessarily ours. We had some flexibility, but it was kind of a lockdown environment that you don't really mess with. Now, if you fast forward to kind of the modern integration, we've split up all these different parts of the payment application into services. So there's the core payment application, the user interface, all the security services, the communication module. And what that does for us is we can put the same tech in a bunch of different use cases now.
Absolutely.
And still be that walled garden that you want us to be. You want us to send you encrypted data only. We still do that. But now the big difference is in terms of, like, if you look at the screens, we can run completely headless.
Yeah.
If the retailer wants to go control 100% of the user experience, that's fine. And it doesn't always mess with Micah's world, which is the best part for a payment interface guy. And then, if we want to run on a mobile payment terminal, we can run completely headless. If you want to just use everything we built, it's in familiar language now. It's Android, HTML5. Customers can just make the customizations themselves that they never would have done 10 years ago. So we followed a similar type of path, and now those requests from the marketing department or the business drivers aren't as scary now. Implement a new APM, implement a new loyalty service. It's not as scary. Still some work, but not as scary.
Yeah, we used to joke that we were the department of no inside of a large IT point of sale shop, right? Which is where we spun out from. And at some point, you get sick of always having to tell your partners no. And your comms module, for one, the ability to spark up a questionnaire and pilot it in 5 stores in under a month, that would have never been possible before.
Yeah.
That's great. So maybe wrapping up the topic, it seems like platform flexibility is really one of the themes that we've been drawing out here. So maybe if you guys could just call out, like, who do you think benefits most from this big shift we've been talking about on payments, point of sale platform, and lower level technology? What's the end benefit to everyone, and who benefits the most?
Yeah, well, I think I alluded to it a little bit, but I think who benefits the most, actually, there's a lot of folks that benefit. Let's just be honest. The retailer,
leave some for me, Micah. Leave some for you.
Yeah. All right. Hey, I'll just go simple from a payments perspective, and from being in payments all my life. I grew up with a company where we administered our payments through a cloud-based system, and just I think the tools we're giving our retailers from maybe an operational and IT perspective, where again the administration of your entire estate has become so much simpler. You're not having to touch every store every time you make a change. You're not having to send technicians out on site because you want to update some pin pad code, right? Or to update a piece of client code that sits on the register. It's all been so simplified that I think the real advantage is the folks that actually have to, the operations folks who actually have to take care of making sure business rules at the store level are complementary to the consumer experience, right? That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think the ultimate beneficiary is the consumer. In the last 5 years, we've seen kind of an inverted pyramid where Square and Shopify have been able to distribute really best-in-class shopper experiences that the big box stores have been drooling over, right? That level of integration has just not been possible with the largest retailers, just because the complexity and the bureaucracy that comes with it, and the number of team members and internal constituencies that have to be satisfied before something can happen at store level. And this modularity approach has really simplified net production, to Micah's earlier point, right? Getting from A to Q, where we can get a published plan with diagrams and signed off by Q, so that we can execute and push it out to the stores in small pilots, medium-sized pilots, and then general deployments. That cycle has shortened, I would imagine, by about 10 times. The amount of time that we used to dedicate to that cycle is 10 times what it is today. So, yeah. And back to that inverted pyramid piece, I saw Micah's and Tim's heads bobbing, like, that's a real thing, right? We're just now able to see mainline retailers, big box and tier 0, tier 1, tier 2, with the ability to keep up with that level of integration between mobile and, consumer mobile point of sale, kiosk, and point of sale, and maybe not as complex as what you would have seen at a Square retailer or Shopify, but that level of integration between those modules is just now capable. So I think the main beneficiary is the consumer in a couple of different ways. The consumer benefits from a much smoother and a better expectation meeting solution that they ultimately get to use. I think it disappears largely from the consumer's mindset. They don't notice the payments process and quite frankly, the point of sale process as much as they were before, reminded through pain. And ultimately, I think the production benefits lead to kind of a catapult approach where the people that Micah was talking about in operations and IT are able to refocus their energies on delivery of value and not just this mess that we have to deal with, which is what the case was 7 to 10 years before. So completely agree with you, Micah.
Yep.
Well, we're in a great place because I have nothing to add to that question. You guys nailed it. So maybe let's transition a little bit to where merchants and ISVs are trying to reimagine the payment experience. Things that they're thinking about with next generation payments or payments as a service or thinking through the unified customer journey. So I'll start with, the question on what are the next generation payment methods like QR code, biometric, or touchless payments that are gaining the most traction. Maybe help us with a little bit of separating what is the fad or the keep an eye on type of thing to what do we see picking up steam quickly and we should really kind of put some thought energy into. Do you guys have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah. So I always like to back up to the pandemic, right? The pandemic years, everything fundamentally shifted with payments, right? It became a very heavy touch experience to being as touchless as you possibly make it to make your consumers comfortable, right? So as we came out of the pandemic, a lot of that kind of stayed the same, or at least it does in my view, right? Where tap payments, which were kind of, maybe something that wasn't as popular before, is now all anybody uses, either the phone or your card. And then I think a lot has also shifted with the unbanked, right? So this new generation of folks, including my kids, who don't really want to have a bank account. They'd rather, put their money in the PayPal account and use QR code payments. And, again, going to the touchless theme, I think that's kind of where that shift is going. That is, again, I would say QR code payments didn't have much adoption prior to pandemic and even prior to now. But from Toshiba's perspective, we got requests to support QR code payments a few years ago, and we were easily able to implement it into our new platform where now we can offer QR code payments, right? So, I'll touch on biometrics a little bit. I in my opinion, it hasn't become the easy payment method to use so far. A lot of people have tried to implement it over the years. I remember companies back in the early 2000s who tried it. I know it's coming a lot more prevalent now, but just kind of the trust of the consumer is, I think, a little bit of a gap there. But again, with the way certain vendors are implementing biometrics, I could see that becoming something that needs to get more of a push from the payments industry. Just because then you're not carrying a wallet, you're not carrying a card, you can do everything through facial recognition or through a palm print. So, to your point, focusing forward, I think two things: unbanked as well as biometrics payments, I think will be big in the future.
Yeah, I would only second that, Micah. I think you're exactly right, Ron. If you think in terms of what we went through with COVID, it was that necessity to remove touch or touch interaction from technology that gets touched by everybody, kiosks, payment devices, those sorts of things, and kind of a repudiation of what was required at previous days, but then also a real focus on privacy and government overreach potentially, where consumers had, sorry, my assistant is barking in the next door office. So the need from a consumer perspective to maybe remain aloof from those types of interactive technologies. I think QR and tap to pay are the perfect remedy for that, where I credential in with my phone. It's my phone. And as a consumer, I feel very safe tapping that phone against a payment device or against a mobile point of sale tablet or against a kiosk, where we have many great partners who are doing terrific work with regard to biometrics, facial and palm, and others for payment. And I don't want to disparage their efforts at all. I think what they're doing is really important work. But there's, to Micah's earlier point, it's not catching the traction quite yet that we've seen with QR payments and tap. And I suspect that will remain as long as we have that hangover potentially from where it started with COVID. But I do see that as part of the future of payments, to your point, or to your question, Tim. I think we're just scratching the surface on QR and the capabilities of tap and the universality of tap to pay and being able to lift and land those payment sequences and orchestrate them in new and exciting ways that we're kept busy on that front.
Yeah.
Where we're still investing and investigating the alternatives. And like I said, we've got great partners doing terrific work on that front. But I feel like we're just getting started with the capabilities as it pertains to QR and tap, especially if you think in terms of 𝗧𝗵𝗲s, where it's a joining of payments and point of sale, homologation. There we go. Of payments and point of sale, and the kind of diminishing the curtain between our two worlds, and putting that at the tip of the spear in SMB and mid market to start with, just because of the cost of that interchange and other costs. But that is a really exciting area for us, and the growth there is exciting.
Yeah, and there was a question in the chat about just thoughts on 𝗧𝗵𝗲s in the U.S. market. What are going to be, I mean, I'm kind of reading into the question, but what do you guys see as the first use cases that's coming out of retail specifically for 𝗧𝗵𝗲s?
Tim, you and I have talked about this offline in the past.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of weight behind 𝗧𝗵𝗲s as a viable extension to the point of sale and kiosk and mobile point of sale capabilities of the largest retailers in the land, the tier zeros. And then we see a little bit of open field or green field as we get down to the mid-market and SMB, where it seems to be the most popular. And I suspect that that's caused by just an interchange cost. A card not present versus what we're talking about, and the way that those transactions are orchestrated are a little bit more costly for the mid-market and above, the tier 2s and tier 3 retailers. So, yeah. But I'm curious to hear, you and I have shared that. Maybe you want to share a little bit from your experience too, Tim, but I'm curious to hear what Micah and his experience is.
Yeah. So I want to come at it from a different approach and talk about the ease of integration, right? So at Toshiba, we've got some mobile solutions we're trying to bring to market, and as you guys know, a traditional payments integration certification is a year at least, right? I know we're talking about modularization. Some things that have not simplified are the whole certification process, integration process. But with 𝗵𝗲s, you're talking about a pre-certified solution that can easily be implemented into these touch points that, us at Toshiba want to go sell, right?
Yeah.
So from an integration perspective, a lot of ease there. We've also been getting quite a bit of requests from our retailers to support a 𝗧𝗵𝗲s application. So to your point, Troy, it's not just the mid-market, mid-tier folks. It's our tier 0, tier 1s who want to use, just a simple application they can use to take out to the parking lot to do Christmas tree sales, right?
Sure.
Or do hot dog sales, right? So I to the point of the question, I see 𝗵𝗲s definitely taking off in the US. We know how popular it is over in Europe already. And as, to my point earlier, as consumers get more comfortable with not dipping or swiping your card, and they're comfortable with just tapping, which, I think it's a lot more acceptable than it used to be. I think it's just going to get more, the trend's going to keep going that direction. And again, as consumers get comfortable with that, I could see a big use for 𝗧𝗵𝗲s, even in the tier 0, tier 1 market. Yeah.
Yeah. And Troy, like, to answer your question, I would agree with that. It's been the smaller customers in the market that have had the most quick reaction, or really more the ISVs that serve that market that want to implement that the quickest, and they see the immediate ROI for field service for a small retailer that doesn't maybe want to buy specialized hardware. But I'm shocked that the middle hasn't really moved, but the top of the market is really thinking. It's like a light bulb has gone off. They're thinking about, I've got 40,000 Zebras deployed. If I wanted to add payment to those, I have to buy specialized terminals. I got to buy specialized cases, and it's only for 3 months out of the year for the Christmas slot.
That's right.
And so I'm seeing more light bulbs go off at the very large end of the market and the small end of the market, and I don't know when the middle is coming. But one thing I do know is that we're starting to get to that point where right now over 50% of card present transactions are tapped in card, which blows my mind. We were not there 3 years ago.
No, 3 years ago, we didn't have the population of cards out there.
Yeah.
No. I think Visa has more contactless cards deployed than about a 1.5 times the US population.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people hold a lot of Visa cards, I guess. So it's probably not everybody that has a contactless card, but we're hitting that point, and it's the stats are even more wild in big cities. I think we're up over 65% average of tap transactions in larger metros. So it's coming.
Yeah.
It's coming.
We saw this in early days not early days for everyone, but 10 years ago in mobile point of sale, where just the management of all the battery operated devices, and then the associate clanking around like a Ghostbuster in aisle, with the payment device, and something to deactivate EAS wasn't a reality. And now you think about 𝗧𝗵𝗲s and the opportunities for buy online, pickup in-store curbside, or propane sales outside for a C-store, or, these various applications that really free the associate to go and join the consumer or the guest wherever he or she is and transact. We had a really interesting customer story where it's a mainline retailer. You would not think of them doing this, but think about a mainline retailer that we all know rolling through a major borough in New York, selling air conditioners out of the back of a vehicle, out of a semi, and being able to transact there with the people in a new and innovative way. Now, at Zennia, we do that with our pop-up division, and outfit an off-the-shelf tablet with an Ingenico or a Verifone payment. Sorry, Tim, close your ears. Or Verifone payment puck device, but the ability to just have no device that's tethered, no battery to manage, and you mentioned earlier about just taking those sequences and embedding them with our code and making it seamless to the user, seamless to the consumer. It is one of the areas where, when I talked about just the tip of the iceberg for value that we can continue to pursue out of tap and QR payments, that this is the big example that I had top of mind when I was describing that.
That's a great point. And Chore, you might be able to speak to this better, but how are you at Xenia Retail thinking about weaving payments in with, loyalty and personalized offers within your unified customer journey that you're creating?
Wow. Well, that's a great question. We've made the large investments in the last 2 years in a new, what we call next gen loyalty. It's a module we call Spark, and it's an AI mesh layer that really just takes advantage of the microservices and existing infrastructure that we have within our unified commerce platform. So what you're describing is exactly our area of focus here for a good chunk of time. Or we designed it for a year, and then we've been implementing it for the last couple of years and making it perfect. But the ability to simultaneously look at buying history versus shopping history, like what is the customer doing in aisle, scanning a product and putting it back versus scanning a product and ultimately it's part of a cart that gets transacted. So buying and shopping histories are different. And then location in store, using a real-time location service that we've had for over a decade as part of our stack. Indoors, being able to see what products they're looking at and adjacent products and extrapolating out what their intent of the visit is. And now being able to introduce this mesh AI manifold, for lack of a better term, that's able to draw from buying and shopping history, location, sort of projecting what intent is, and then extrapolating out, oh, well, Tim is here at Home Depot today to buy product for a hardscape project, and he's got landscaping bricks, and he's got industrial adhesive to bind them together, but he's forgotten the fabric underlayment and the staples to keep those in place. Let's make a thoughtful suggestion at this juncture in his shopping journey for those, rather than Tim gets home and gets yelled at from his partner or spouse, and you have to turn around and do that trip all over again. Or maybe, gasp, go to Lowe's instead. So capture those dollars while you're in store, communicate with you on a one-to-one conversation basis rather than a broadcast one-to-many, where it's not personalized, certainly not hyper-personalized. It's not relevant to what your shopping trip is for. And it ignores, maybe abandoned items in your cart that are 11 hours or 4 hours old. It lacks that understanding or capability to take that as an input data point. So, and I think it just goes hand in glove with what we described earlier as far as kind of deconstructing payments and then treating it as a service or a utility that it's kind of a companion between the customer and the brand at every interaction point at this point. So there are some pitfalls. You have to be really careful now that we're talking about PCI and GDPR, and California's got some special laws. But if you find a good partner who knows what they are doing, they can keep you out of the rattlesnake nest, as it were. Our goal is to always seek that, as close to zero scope as possible for the point of sale and the modules within our platform. So that's what we seek.
Yeah, I think it's a powerful way to sum it up. Is that's kind of the end. That to me is the value that we're all trying to get to, is implementing the value add stuff that helps the merchant experience. And it ties into payments too. So, no, great call outs. So as we move on to thinking about, bringing bringing payment infrastructure and point of sale infrastructure into the future, we want to walk towards more of a focus on some real stories that we have. We want to talk about how we all collaborate in our kind of three tri-party model, and then next steps on how people can tangibly roll these types of solutions out. So Micah, I'll start with you. Maybe you can help us tie some of this together. What's an example of how a Toshiba customer has successfully deployed the collaborative model between payments, point of sale, this kind of new modular type system that we've been talking about, and seen more of a measurable result?
Sure. So our next gen solution, it's about 5 years old or so. And it's been not without growing pains, but we do have a retailer that is pretty much fully deployed at this point. Came from our legacy solution.
Yeah.
Again, I quit harping on the same points, but huge PCI scope, heavy customizations, and it was great partnering with this customer, because we were able to take all of their customization, say, hey, what makes sense to put into a base product, and predictably most of it did, right? So we were able to build this solution in partnership with them. And the measurable result, again, I'll talk from the PCI scope first, was, it greatly reduced scope. So basically you took a lot of your payment infrastructure, moved it up to the cloud. That cloud is now in scope, but in a lot less scope, right? The semi-integrated architecture down at the store, they went from fully integrated, where again, payment data is infecting every part of your store, where now it's completely isolated from point of sale. So, we heard about their first PCI DSS audit after they went live, and sure enough, greatly reduced scope. And beyond that, okay, so then we'll talk about the solution itself. Being able to turn on and off tender types and turn on and off rules, and that is all much more simplified now. From a device perspective, they're able to easily swap out devices. They're able to easily update those devices. And I'm talking about the PIN-pad devices, right? From a central location, right? Again, as opposed to touching every store. So from an operational perspective, that made life much easier. Now the same customer came to us. They've been on the journey for about 1.5 years, 2 years. And we're able to come to us and say, hey, we want to implement a health benefits program, right? And we were able to implement that in, I would say, we're finishing up certification now, but it probably took about 6 months time, where in our legacy solution, it's going to take twice that long, right? So, and once it's ready, it's not like they have to go update their whole entire system like they would with the legacy system. You got to upgrade your point of sale, your payments, you got to upgrade everything just to get this new feature. We're able to deploy this feature for them when it's ready, in a pretty small package, right? It's, just a microservice, for lack of a better term, and they'll now be able to turn on and run that health benefits program, right? So I think if you take all those things and put them together, it's just made their lives easier. I don't have a dollar amount, unfortunately, but I'm sure it's up there when it comes to what they save and what they will save in the future, by having a modern platform that isn't so heavy like the legacy platform that they were on.
Fantastic. That's a great story. Troy, a lot of times you're at the head of building, you're kind of at the head of this best of breed ecosystem as the software platform provider. You've got maybe Toshiba as the secure hardware in the case of some of your solutions, or sometimes the point of sale. You've got Ingenico for payments and Xenia for the more platform layer. What are some of the key governance and integration principles that a retailer would need to follow to ensure all these systems operate, all as one, without creating new silos that have to be managed all the time?
Well, I can talk about GDPR until my lips turn blue, and that really comes into play with regard to once we pierce the veil and we have PII data coming in as far as next gen loyalty. But, I'd really like to just piggyback on what Micah was talking about too for just a second and talk more about how this, being, to your point, Tim, being that tip of the spear for a lot of best of breed solutions that we have to, we may have 7 to 10 partners that we are bringing in with us as the point of sale provider, right? Obviously, it's a unified commerce platform, and point of sale is one of our modules, but it's really thinking in terms of relationship orchestration between the brand and the consumer, right? And payments is a huge part of that, as you know, and the ability to disaggregate all of the traditional value of that monolith point of sale and then encapsulate a certain series of microservices in our database for a mobile point of sale module or a kiosk module, a self-checkout, kind of the same thing as a kiosk module, and consumer-based modules. That ability to meet a client, and here was my fun story that I wanted to share and piggyback on Micah, meeting a client who intended only to engage Zennia to outfit their mall-based specialty retail stores, over 3,000 of them nationwide, with a point of sale solution so that they could sell at the wall. They wanted an increase in items per transaction in IPT, with the understanding that would lift average transaction value and satisfy some demands from shareholders and the leadership. And when they came to us, we did the base integrations in what we call our mimicry approach, where we look just like the existing incumbent, and the sales audit system and everything downstream is they don't know the difference between a transaction coming out of the Zennia platform or the incumbent point of sale platform. Now, remember, we're just trying to mesh our 𝗵𝗲s into somebody else's point of sale environment, right? So the ability to not know the difference from a sales audit perspective or anything downstream like loyalty, that we're even in the mix, that there's not another cook in the kitchen, is a big point for them. But then also being able to toggle on mobile point of sale. And then when the client realized that they had a mutual exclusivity between their new order management system and their legacy point of sale, they said, can you toggle on your point of sale now? And because we fully embrace that modular approach, we were able to say absolutely. And without delaying their project at all, even though they came upon that shortcoming themselves, we were able to support them by toggling on our enterprise point of sale and launching at the same time with enterprise point of sale and mobile point of sale with no chinks in the giddy up, so to speak, and deploy on time and on budget. So that's, and all with a next gen modular approach to payments along the way with our partner, if I could give them a shout out, our partner 𝗷𝗄𝗄, and they're our, a great long-term partner of ours for decades. And they help us a lot with that adoption of new tender types and give us that opportunity to feed our clients with a steady flow of available tender options, since they're at the front of that line. But that's how I would, that's the fun story I would share. The ability to deploy modules in weeks, not months, or not even, 3 years, which normal rip and replace point of sale project would take. We can go in with our camel's nose under the tent flap, do all of the integrations in 4.5 or 5 months, just to support a mobile point of sale or just to support a SCO, self-checkout.
Yep.
And then if we run into trouble, that mesh can still be there if they want it in the future, but we can also toggle on point of sale or one of our other modules and support our client.
Yeah, and I also had a similar. That's a really cool story of how you can just adapt to all these different use cases very easily.
Tim, if I could interrupt you just a second too.
Yeah.
I forgot one of the big payoff pieces because it goes to Micah's shop over there, Toshiba. We were running on they asked us to run initially on 24-year-old Sherpa's devices. and we were doing it.
Wow.
And then we helped them little by little cut over to the latest and greatest over a period of time. But our deployment was touchless. So we just shipped hard drives or solid state drives ultimately to the new ones, but hard drives for the legacy 𝗧𝗵𝗲 units, among the first that were ever built, I believe, that had a Toshiba branding plate on it, and even some legacy IBM devices that were still out there, 941s and 942s, Micah.
That's before my time.
Before my time.
I'm not quite sure how you did that. That seems like some secret sauce. How you were able to do that, but very impressive. So maybe we'll kind of sum it up since we're coming on time, and want to leave a second for questions if there are any. So you can start putting that in the chat. So for a retailer who's feeling the weight of legacy payment systems, and I'll also extend it to legacy platforms, what's the most single practical, actionable first step they can take to start leveraging payments more as a customer experience driver?
Yeah, I would say, you know, every business has their consumer experience that they want to deliver, right? So just to say as a first step, I would say look at the options that are out there. You know, we talked a lot about MPOS, we talked about semi-integrated solutions. You know, look what works best for your business, for the touch points that you want to offer your consumer, and, you know, figure out what solutions in the market would best suit you. You know, that'd be my thing. That's kind of what I thought about as we were talking about this question prior. I think it's just really up to the individual retailer to see what works best, because there's a lot of options out there, right?
If I could take a stab at that one too, I think the greatest gift that we've been given now with this modular capability is the ability to try. The spin up period for an effort that we're describing is much shorter than what most retailers are accustomed to. And we started our pop-up as a practice division really out of need, because we had a significant ask from a large client of ours. But most of our clients today use it for sandboxing. We want to try this for our mainline stores, but we don't want to potentially damage our brand, and our customers will give us more grace if we try this in a sandbox. So my response to you, Tim, is that how can we get started? Start small. How do you eat an elephant, right? It's one bite at a time. It's starting with that first bite.
Yeah.
But we're benefited now like never before with that ability to shrink that cycle so that we can get to the try fast and get real learnings and fail. And I think the organizations that benefit the best from this approach are the organizations that have that willingness and urgency to fail at top of mind, right? It's not a must-win mission. This is something that we're going to try to break stuff in and try to reimagine and be bold with. And it's tough to be bold if you're afraid to, skin your knee once in a while. So I guess that would be my challenge is, let's start small, be willing to fail a lot and often, and get some people with some thick skin and some ingenuity and intelligence to lead those efforts.
Perfect. Yeah, my thoughts to that question is really think about mobility use cases that have scared you for years, and figure out a way to easily prove the concept or not. And I think it's similar to what you're saying, Troy. It's not, there aren't as many barriers as there were in the past, especially if you can add on a module that allows you to do mobility. Same thing with semi-integrated payments and with soft POS. These are all enablers that make these one-time daunting projects much more manageable. And they might be a lot closer than you think, especially like my example earlier, if you got 40,000 zebras deployed with contactless already built in, or 40,000 Honeywells deployed, it's some of this stuff it's not that much risk to just try it. So that's what I might leave everybody with. So I'll give one more chance for questions, but I'll just open it up to the team. Any parting thoughts on the discussion today? Any other thoughts would like to leave the audience with?
Well, this was kind of just an open stream of consciousness for me. So I don't get the opportunity to share, from 26 years of experience like this with some peers in the industry who I've known before and had good relationships with. So I appreciate this selfishly. Thank you. And I hope we do get some good interaction with some thoughtful questions from the group.
Yeah. Same, but thank you, Tim, for having me. First webinar, I'm a webinar newbie. This has been really fun. It's fun to, like Troy said, just kind of share that knowledge, and look forward to the next one.
Perfect. Well, I would echo the same thought. I really appreciate this. This was much more collaborative than I thought it would even be. You guys were great back and forth, sharing some really good thoughts on some principles that people can move forward with. So with that and no questions, we're gonna end the webinar, and just a big thank you to Troy and Micah for all the contribution today.